As Sean, it's National Signing Day, and nobody's really talking about it. This is kind of just the new norm that the original signing day just kind of goes by without anybody really doing anything about it.
Yeah, I mean, what today is this kind of a day you might find a guy late. I think it's big at places like Alabama, Arizona, Washington, maybe Michigan, but places that have had coaching changes.
Okay.
Like today, the guy that Nebraska is probably going to land and sign as a true signee is Keona Wilhite, and he was signed with Washington. And then when DeBoer left to go to Alabama, he was released from his letter of intent, and Nebraska was able to go. They haven't got him yet officially, but it looks very promising that they'll get him. If you're trying to connect the dots here, Nebraska's press conference was originally going to be at 11 a.m. today. They pushed that forward to 3 o'clock. Keona Wilhite will make his public announcement today around 2:30. I think it looks pretty good for Nebraska, Keona Wilhite. But you're right. There's not a lot there. There's some walk-ons that they're going to announce. This is not the day that it once was, where coaches like Bill Bush used to make a living on February signing day.
Yeah, Sean, it was better times. It was better times. It was because just think about this: your signing date this year, there was teams signing kids and they had bowl games that day, and so it was just for the media, for everyone, right, Sean? It was just so much better. The lead up to it, everything with it. The day wasn't an event for the staff. I mean, you're in at 5 o'clock in the morning. For East Coast guys, given their stuff's going to come in at 7. There was usually a breakfast available. Catered, yes, catered breakfast. But it was better times. And then then there also, remember, Sean, I'm sure you covered those also, but there'd be huge events. We'd go to Omaha. Then the next day, like on Thursday in Lincoln, we'd have big events, and people hadn't even seen these kids yet. And so they would
Omaha dinner used to draw 1,200 people.
1,200 people, sold out. Incredible event. Cocktail hour. Every coach got up and talked. It was better times. It was like Sinatra. Better times.
Sammy Davis.
Yes.
The Rat Pack.
The Rat Pack.
Now, Sean, I guess in addition to that, what is the solution, if there is a solution, on how we should change the schedule? Should we leave the schedule in the calendar how it is, where there's one in December and then one a couple months later in February? Is there any way to, I guess, combat this? Not even an issue, but just this conversation, because I was looking through the On3 rankings the other day, and there's only 4 top 50 guys that are going to be signing a national letter of intent today.
Yeah, I think if anything, the December one is the one that you've got to adjust. I think you have to do maybe one in August, and then keep a February one for coaching change situations that are happening right now. But most of recruiting has been pushed up. So we've already seen the 25 cycle start in January. Teams, if there's been 2 or 3 or 4 good weekends where they began their 25 recruiting with junior days. Coaches, for the first time ever, can physically hold meetings with 25 prospects off campus. It's not technically in-home, but they can at least meet with them and actually spend hours with them talking, and their parents could come to the school if they wanted to. So that's different. In March and April, all these 25 prospects will take visits on their own dime and go all around the country. And some can start taking official visits in April, May, and June. So a lot of kids will make their decisions by July 4th. So to me, it makes the most sense down the road, put the earlier signing day closer to the start of the football season before these kids start playing, let them sign in August. That way December doesn't turn into, because you think about it, if you're a playoff coach right now, you could have 3 or 4 additional games. And we saw how stressful that was this year for a lot of coaches. I mean, you heard Hugh Freeze say he hardly even watched any Maryland film because he had to finish out signing day for their bowl game. They got beat. Well, that's not going to fly in the playoff. Like, you have to focus on that. So it wouldn't surprise me if over time we go to a model where they sign before the start of the season, and then they let the coaches worry about their transfer portal and their own roster in December, and not make it so chaotic where you have to sign and make sure your kids all sign in December while you're getting ready for possibly 3 or 4 playoff games.
Sean, I don't want to always be the contrarian, which I tend to be, but in August, would there be an issue with coach? And Bill would understand this. Coaching staff's getting ready for the season, and oh, by the way, we're going to have signing day Sean,
issue,
I've always told you that. Go ahead.
The process is done by June, though. Like these kids, the official visits, it goes to the dead period in July.
Okay.
So it's not like you're going to be visiting off campus in August.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that group of players will have been finished with their process. They may have taken 4 or 5 or 6 official visits already by that point. So my thought is, why not just let them sign in August? Eliminate that in December, where you don't have to worry about going around the country and entertaining and seeing these players.
Okay.
I mean, let prospects take official visits during their junior year. I think there's a lot of things you can do to tinker this, to not make December, because that's what we're talking about here. It's the month of December that has just run coaches into the ground with bowl game preparations, the early signing day. If you have 25 commits in your class, theoretically, your head coach should and will make 25 in-home visits over 17 days.
Yeah, it's almost impossible to manage. And you could do it, Sif, to answer your question about preparation in August. Just do it August 1. Because it's not different between August 1 and August 8th.
Okay.
No, they're either going to sign it or not going to sign.
Okay.
So you do it August 1. And most of the time you've not started yet.
Right.
There might be a school or two that plays in week 0. So if you did that, would give you the opportunity. But the other thing that Sean, that is incredible for coaches, which is better, is when you can sign those guys early. Because the nightmare of just trying to keep everything going through the month of January out on the road recruiting, it was horrific trying to keep a hold of those guys. It's like, no, just have it done.
Yeah.
They're signed and they're done. You'd be going to see them every week and do it. It was and the pressure was immense to try to hold on to during that time. So it's saying, but if they were signed in August, also with the good thing about being signed early was you knew where they were at. So if they didn't sign with you, I'm still interested, but I'm going to sign. You just moved on. You're like, hey, we're done. Don't worry about him. Don't worry about him. But an earlier date, something has to be done. Because I said this year, if you do the math, I think there was 3 bowl games on signing day. They were coaching in a bowl game, and they had to sign
on early sign
day, and they had to sign their team.
It's not, August. I guess you guys got me convinced.
And Sean, just to put a Nebraska focus on it, we noticed last year in like March was a big visit month. Is that correct for Nebraska football?
Yeah, so it goes. They're in the dead period right now, Nick, until the first weekend of March. The beginning then in March, you can start bringing prospects on your campus. So everybody in the country will start using their spring practices, particularly the weekends. But kids go on spring break. So on spring break, you'll see a lot of prospects take visits and go to practices. And I mean, Nebraska brought in just a plethora of as many spring visitors as I've ever seen, because that's the cycle now. Everything is kicked up a notch. And, that's why I think it would only make sense to allow official visits to begin at a part during their junior year. Now, the one argument you can make is you're eliminating the entire senior year. And everybody that's played high school football and sports knows of people that have made massive jumps as seniors. And are those kids going to get left in the dust because everyone's racing to sign the best juniors, essentially? I mean, that's the one argument you can really make is, by speeding this up, you essentially eliminate any performance over the course of a senior year. But if you're a good coach that's patient, that has a process, you could possibly pick off some of those players and sign them maybe at the later signing day. But you have to have the spots to obviously be able to do that too.
Okay, put in perspective, Keona Wilhite. It looks like Nebraska's getting this Keona Wilhite from Arizona, Tucson, right, Sean?
Yes.
I mean, as an edge guy, looks like the only edge guy in the class, if I'm reading this right.
Yeah, I mean, you look at as a true edge, he's the only one they're going to bring in, and I would label him as a make room guy. I mean, they don't really have room guys. Their numbers, you know what they are. They're going to have a number of players on these NIL type scholarships, but Wilhite is like, all right, we make room for this one because he's a need player. We would take him next year. We'd take him this year. And they because of the situation at Washington, they're going to get him. The other one I want to mention is Kamir Prescott. He at one point was one of their higher rated safeties on the board from Philadelphia Northeast High School, committed to Wisconsin right after he visited Nebraska. Well, then parted ways with the Badgers before December signing day. And I don't know if there was an academic element there where he was not able to meet their admission standards at Wisconsin, because we've seen that happen over the years. But he was just kind of sitting there as a free agent. Nebraska, we believe, will bring him in as well as essentially a walk-on with an NIL element. And that, to me, is a steal. I think he's as impressive as any of the defensive backs they'll bring in outside of Mario Buford. Obviously, Buford's a really, really talented prospect. But Kamir Prescott coming in as a walk-on is a huge steal if they're able to get that one done here this morning, too.
Sean, one last thing. You used the word plethora. Was that from Three Amigos? That was.
I don't even know.
Would you say there's
Omaha educated?
They said there was a plethora of gifts. And I just
don't
want
have
to know
as
if you brought
fancy
that.
of a Rolodex as Steve Sipple, because I'm not as fancy of a writer as Mr. Sipple over there. But that made my debut, my segment here on the ticket.
I appreciate it very much. At first, I thought Sean's watched Three Amigos, which is a great movie, and they used the word plethora in there, and that impressed me very, very much.
Sean, last one before we let you go really quickly here. Keona Wilhite looked to be last thing on him, fully going to UCLA. What was the thing that kind of switched or, flipped the switch late last week that started trending him to the Huskers?
Well, I think after having his head coach at Washington, go to Alabama, forcing him to reopen his process. And he's in Tucson, Arizona, by the way, and they had a head coaching change. I think the kid has been kind of burned by this whole thing. And here UCLA was going to get him. We believe he was a silent commit to the Bruins. Well, then Chip Kelly that week is interviewing for jobs, and he's still interviewing. I mean, I just saw a report before I came on. I believe Seattle has talked to Chip Kelly. So Chip Kelly is still looking for offensive coordinator jobs to leave a head coaching position at UCLA because he knows they want him out of there. And the only reason they're not firing him probably is they don't want to have to pay him. Or I don't know what the other reason would be, but I'm sure he looked at that and he's like, you know what, I want to go somewhere where I know the head coach is going to be there. And Chip Kelly does not appear like he's going to be at UCLA much beyond 2024, if that.
Yeah, Chip Kelly, 35-34 in his 6 years with the Bruins, 1-1 in bowl games. Been to the LA Bowl and to the Sun Bowl. He's 1-1 in those games. Sean, appreciate the time as always. We'll go ahead and let you go, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it.